Hello and welcome to Planet NOLA Pod. You are listening. I'm Mary Jacobs, the host. Today I am joined by Maryam Henderson Uloho, the owner, proprietor, CEO, head woman in charge at SisterHearts, their store, located in the greater New Orleans area, right outside the city, and I guess Araby, Chalmette, technically. Araby. An incredible thrift store on a mission. If you don't know this, I have a small business where I style people primarily in secondhand clothing, and so I met Maryam when I was thrifting. I was out thrifting, just sourcing for clients, and she came right up to me in that store and chatted me up about some project or some idea, and I was like, oh, this is my people. Like, you immediately were like, oh, I'll have an idea for this thing. And I was like, oh, I like that idea, because I'm a real idea person too. And then we just cut up for like 35 minutes in that store. Mm-hmm. And I remember I posted it on the Mary's Rack Instagram, and everyone loved you. I probably got like 50 DMs from people being like, I love this woman. Because we were cutting up. We had so much fun. It was very obvious that we're like, same wavelength kind of people. Do you know what I mean? And ever since then we've kept in touch, and yes. I'll go over there, you'll come over here. We check in on each other.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about SisterHearts?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for having me.
Aww.
I really appreciate that. It's very humbling because I really admire what you do as a stylist. It's just the most phenomenal thing for me. And I'm just really grateful that you would allow me to have this platform. And SisterHearts is a place for formerly incarcerated to come and get transitional work. But it's not just transitional work. It's a place where they can come to reverse the trauma of incarceration. So all of us that work at SisterHearts, we've all been to prison. I did almost 13 years, and half of which was spent in solitary confinement. So there was a lot of trauma that is associated and related to incarceration. And so SisterHeart is a safe space. It's nurturing environment to help us to reverse that trauma, and then most importantly to be able to identify with the fact that we're even having trauma. It's the only place in the country that I'm aware of to help people to reverse prison trauma.
It's like living, working experience, while also like it's a very holistic approach.
Yes.
Because you can't just put someone back in the world.
Absolutely.
And expect them to not be informed by their experiences in prison. Like, your decisions in your mind probably in so many situations go back to that state of being. And like, I can't imagine unlearning that. Also, solitary confinement, like you coming out of so many years in solitary confinement, I feel like, especially people with that shared experience, that is such a distinct and, such a small percentage of people have experienced what you've experienced. And so there's not enough people in the world who even know how to help or what needs to be done.
That's true, Mary.
So you're probably, you're probably learning as you're teaching.
I am.
But that makes you the best teacher because you're the most informed teacher and student and like everything you could possibly. Oh my God, I did not realize that. That is so wild. What's been like what has been the biggest focus when you meet somebody? What's the first thing you try to teach them? I imagine it's not hanging up clothes. Like, I imagine it's something bigger. Like,
no.
You're in the world now. What's the first step for you?
The first question I ask is, are you institutionalized?
Like in their mind still.
Yes. And many times they will be in complete denial. You spent 15, 20, 30 years in prison, but you're not institutionalized. How did you manage that?
Yeah.
And so first, let's identify with the problem. Mm-hmm. Once you identify with the problem, then I'll ask them questions like, are you territorial? Mm-hmm. Do you still wake up for count the same time that we went through count? Did you have visits in prison? They say yes. Did you have to go through strip searches, bend over and cough? It's like, yes. Were you ever in solitary confinement? Yes. So I start asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
When you immediately meet a person, do you not immediately feel defensive? Yes or no? Yeah, I do. You're institutionalized. But we've never put a label on it. And I'm only talking about people that have been to prison. There's never been a label put on prison trauma for us to even know what we're suffering from.
Mm-hmm.
But where the problem comes in, and to show you the extent of prison trauma, when people come outside, why do you think they can't survive out here? Why do you think people keep going back to prison? Why do you think they get out year after year and come out here and continue doing crimes to go back to prison?
Mm-hmm.
Because they have been programmed, institutionalized to return.
Yeah.
I can't even begin to tell you how many times the guards told me, "Oh, you'll be back. I'm gonna keep the lights on for you."
What does that do for anyone?
It causes us to come back.
I guess it's good for business for them.
It's very good for business.
Oh my God, that's like growing up being told, you know, if you had someone in your family is like, oh, you're very selfish. You're a selfish person, and you're told that your whole life. And then you've got this narrative about yourself where you're like, I'm selfish. I just am selfish. My actions are selfish. I am now a selfish person. And it becomes true because there are people around you that are pointing at you and saying, you are this thing. And so how hard that is to break, like that is the most psychological trauma, to be told something and just be like, well, I guess this is true about myself. I understand that this is how this happens, but it's like, what dehumanization is that? That is so messed up.
It's called dehumanization, demoralization, and desensitizing.
Yeah.
Those are the three components to keep people
in control,
enslaved, in prison. Because you have to remember, when you go to prison, that is a form of slavery. During the 1800s,
it was a pipeline.
But when slavery was abolished, a lot of the farmers, they couldn't farm their land. They needed the slaves, but they were all free. So how could they reinvent slavery? The only way they could reinvent slavery was through imprisonment. So now they developed laws that if you didn't have a place to stay, you're a vagrant. Prison.
Yeah.
So now they were able to build the prison population back up. But what did we do? We farmed the land. We did all the work the slaves did under the control of the government. So that's why imprisonment has become $1 trillion business even till today.
And people think that part's over. That part is not over. The nation uses prison labor for so much.
Well, I can tell you that they have houses where they kill the slaughterhouses. We have thousands and thousands of land for farming. We have textile.
Yeah, I've seen some documentaries on the textile.
We have furniture repair. Almost anything that society needs, we're doing that stuff in prison. We're not getting paid for it.
Well, don't they also pay like pennies? Like some people do get paid, but it's like...
I got 2 pennies an hour.
2 pennies an hour. That's like almost worse than nothing. That is like a laugh.
Yeah, at the end of the week, I may have gotten $1.25.
So what kind of work did you do?
Well, that was really interesting because the majority of my time I was in solitary confinement, so I didn't do very much of anything. But because of my age and my health, I did a job in housekeeping. Now let me I need you to visualize what this housekeeping looks like. Because I had so many physical restraints, I would have to sit at a table or sit in a chair, take a rag, and all day for 8 hours, I have to take that rag. My hand had to constantly move. And I just could wipe the same spot, but my hand had to constantly move.
What?
That was my job. That was called housekeeping.
What house are you keeping? That is ridiculous.
But that was my job.
Yeah, and that's just another way of control, too. Because
And-
you know it's crazy. You know what you're doing is completely crazy.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
But if I didn't do it, I was going to get a report,
Right.
which means I was going to lose privileges,
Mm-hmm.
which mean also that after you get so many, I'm going to the hole again for 90 days at a stretch.
Yeah.
And when you get in solitary, you get another report. That's an additional 90 days. I've spent as much as 18 months in solitary confinement, just being in solitary confinement.
And so the process of unlearning that, I feel like, is your life
Yes,
work. Like,
it
I
is.
feel like, think about people, this is a very bad comparison, but think about people that when they're younger, they're bullied. They're bullied about one thing or another. And they carry that bullying from middle school all the way into their adulthood. Someone tells them they got fat legs. Their whole life, they believe they have fat legs. It's like, this is years of subversive, literal torture. And it's like the unlearning of that, putting people back into society and being like, well, you're free now. And that's what you're saying, is that you're not free.
No.
The freedom is up here. The freedom is
Yes.
breaking the trauma, breaking the
Yes.
habit of prison.
Yes. Yes.
And that is that is such hard work. And we need more people to be doing the work, to understand the work, to be empathetic to the work, to be giving to the work. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like I said, you're the best teacher because you're the student as well.
Yes.
And so SisterHearts, I feel like the mission is to not just give people work.
Not at all. It's not. We don't even call it work.
Right.
It's a program.
Mm-hmm.
I tell them this is not a job, so don't expect to get rich here, make a lot of money, because it's not about the money.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you're learning is priceless.
Mm-hmm.
You're learning how to reestablish yourself as a human being first.
Yeah.
You get to recreate your own identity, an identity that you didn't even have before you went to prison, because you brought trauma from childhood. You brought childhood trauma into your criminal activities, which led you to prison. Then you got traumatized on top of that trauma. So you're now a lifelong resident. You're working on becoming a lifelong resident of incarceration.
Yeah,
and
even-
that's why
even if
they
it's just
have
in their
life,
mind.
even in your mind.
It's so real. When you just said that they're working on like building and finding their like identity or their personality, it's like those are things that are afforded. Understanding yourself is really just afforded to the privileged. Like, to know yourself and to like be comfortable in knowing yourself is something that is for people who are secure, safe, sheltered.
Absolutely.
Pretty much that's it. Like, that's
Absolutely.
kind of it, you know?
Absolutely.
And so it's radical thinking to be trying to get people to just get into their bodies.
But you know, Mary, what you just said is so powerful. I would really like for you to break that down just a little bit, because you say it and you skip over it. But for somebody from this side of the fence, looking at what you just said, I need you to break that down, because your identity, our identity, have been stripped away from ancestors in as an African American.
Right.
But being privileged, because sometimes I see little children, little Europeans, they can jump around, they can fall out, they can have tantrums, and I'm like, this would never
Yeah.
be allowed in an African American community. No,
Right.
we get whoopings, which is still the beatings that derived from slavery,
Of course.
and we carry it on, and we carry it on.
Well, it's like the thing I said. Oh, I've been told I'm selfish my whole life. I must be selfish. It's generational. It's like
Yes.
it's like you believe what is true that has been told to you.
Yes.
So it's like when you're only believing all the things around you, you can't hear your own truth. You just can't.
Let me give you an example. When I was a kid, I was growing up, right? I was very chocolate. I was caramel colored, just chocolate as I could be. And I always had little short teeth, and I always had a gap in my teeth. And I always had white eyes. My eyes were always bright white.
You were a cute ass kid, is what you're telling me.
Well, now that I'm older, I think I was.
Yeah.
I was. But
You were. This is a very cute kid you just described.
I was always called ugly.
Oh.
I was always told that I was ugly. I was always told how my teeth was like little rat teeth. So I never wanted to smile. I did not smile. And they said that my eyes, I looked like a ghost because all you could see was the white in my eyes. And my hair, I've always had long hair.
I wish I could go back and like beat them up for you.
But I've always had the long hair, and it was always thick, so they called me African buckshots, hair. And all the things that I now look at and say to myself, no, wait a minute. I was never really ugly. And it's like, okay, so you're black. I'm an African American. I'm supposed to be this color. So, but everything that they said that I was, it wasn't until I turned 16 and I met someone that validated me as a human and said, no, you are the most beautiful. Oh, smile for me. Just come here, let me look in your eyes. They validated me so much that I saw how, had I stayed in that environment as a child, what I could have been like. And that's why even to today, I hold my head up. When I went to prison, because I had received that validation since the age of 16, nobody could tear me down.
Yeah.
And they could not do it.
Yeah. You say you received the validation, but it's not, when somebody tells you something, like gives you a compliment, most of that compliment has to be you. You have to decide to believe it. Do you know what I mean?
Now I do.
Yeah, but you did then, because you said that validation gave you the fuel, but that was you. That wasn't the validation.
Okay.
That was the fuel. You always knew inside that you were beautiful. And someone else told you, and you were like, yes, I am. Thank you. Finally, someone else is saying the thing. Do you know what I mean? And so it's always been you.
But Mary, I didn't look in the mirror, so no, I wasn't seeing it like that.
You weren't seeing it.
No.
But when you heard it, you knew the truth.
When I heard it, I went to the mirror.
Yeah.
When I heard it, I went to the mirror. And when I heard it, I started looking in the mirror. And then when I started looking in the mirror, and the person that was in the mirror started looking back at me, and I never will forget one day, they smiled at me. And I was like, oh, wow. That's really a beautiful smile.
Yeah.
And then I put some Vaseline on my lips, and my lips started shining. And I was like, oh my goodness. And then I started wearing lipstick.
Yeah.
And so I started recreating my own identity and my own womanness.
Yeah. Okay, so self-identity and like seeing yourself in the mirror and accepting like, oh, maybe what I've been told my whole life is not true, then you have a little bit of understanding of yourself. You have a little bit of like, oh, I'm in there. I'm here. I'm pretty. I'm me. You're kind of starting to ground into yourself.
Yes.
And then you go to prison, and does that work get undone, or do you feel like you still hold on to that?
That work gets completely undone.
Yeah.
It gets so undone because now you don't have time to focus on that, because you're kept in a 6x9 cage like an animal. And when you look in the mirror, you definitely don't want to look in the mirror, because the mirror is like, it's like this metal stuff. And when you look at yourself, your face is distorted.
Yeah.
It's big. It's ugly. And you don't want to look at yourself, right?
Yeah.
I had been out of prison almost 7 years before I put a mirror in my bedroom.
Oof.
I could not look at myself. And I didn't even realize that my trauma was that intense until I was driving Lyft and Uber, and there was a neurosurgeon got in the car. He was from California, and we got to talking. And I was explaining to him about the prison trauma, and he was explaining some things back to me. He said, what I want you to do tomorrow is when you get up, as soon as you get up, look into the mirror. And then he told me what to do. And I said, look into the mirror. I said, but I don't have a mirror in my bedroom. He said, you don't have a mirror in your bedroom? Every woman has a mirror in her bedroom. And right at that very moment, I just kind of broke down and cried, because I realized that I had not had a mirror in my room since I got out of prison.
Yeah, you hadn't even looked at yourself.
I hadn't even looked at myself.
And that was 7 years.
I just put a mirror in my room in 2019.
Jeez, and that was 7 years from when you were released? Is that what you were saying? Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, how can you begin the work of seeing yourself as a whole person?
What I do now is I'm able to use the store. I'm
Mhm.
able to use the store in a lot of different ways. For example, when now I'm talking about the participants, right? So the way that I get them to look at themselves, because I know from the inside out. So it's like, how do I duplicate what I'm going through, what I'm feeling? How do I duplicate this? And so what I do with them is I take their pictures.
Oh, you do. You take a lot of pictures in the store.
I do their pictures. And then I get them to participate, and then I show them their pictures. Then I get them to validate how beautiful the picture is. And so I'm changing the mindset without them even realizing.
That's so subversive right there.
Yeah.
That's the opposite work that those guards did. That is
Yes.
the opposite work.
Yes. And then when they organize areas, we take pictures of it. I blast it. I put it on social media. When customers come in, I'm like, look at the work they did. Look at how beautiful the store is. And it's so therapeutic, but they don't realize until we have our classes that they're actually reversing that trauma.
Yeah. You're like doing the work of a therapist, a social worker, a boss, a leader, a Sherpa. You're doing the work of so many people for these people. And do you feel like the work you've done has helped you grow from your own experience as
Mary,
well?
it has.
Yeah.
You know, it's like sometimes I sit back and I just think to myself, I'm like, you know, if I were to close my eyes today and didn't wake up for tomorrow, I would be like, this world don't owe me anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like I am not only living in my purpose, but I have fulfilled so much of my life's mission.
I'm gonna cry because I just had this conversation this week with Kristen.
Really?
With my partner, yeah, because so do you know my partner and I have a business together. We're about to go in year 6. I'm sorry not to change the subject, but what you just said is so true. It's like sometimes it's really hard, just day to day, and like we're incredibly lucky. We've got a beautiful life, and we've been so privileged along the way.
Yes.
But, you know, opening a business is hard,
Yes.
and it involves a lot of self-sacrifice, and we've got to see a lot of our friends pass us up and own homes and have kids. And, like, you know, I'm about the age where that's pretty normal. And, like, I mean, we just sat down the other day, and I was like, you know, if we were gone tomorrow, we have left enough of such a beautiful, positive impact that, like, my life was worth living. Like, even without the house and the kids. Like, I feel so deeply fulfilled by the work that I've done, that I'm doing. And this is the feeling that, like, I want to give to other people. And that you want to give to other people.
This is how it's phrased. Now I say it, and I'm sure you're going to identify. I want to leave a legacy while I'm still alive.
Yes.
You have left a legacy while you're still alive. You're able to see the fruits of your labor while you're still alive.
Yeah.
Because you can utilize me, for example. When you've introduced so much into my life, and sometimes I have to, you know, catch myself because I want to just reach out and be like, Mary, and I'm like, Mary, you can't do that. But you know, something as simple as showing that you care has been one of the greatest levels of decarceration you could ever imagine. Now, if anyone looking on and seeing this video and they say, well, how can I help? Showing people that you care. People don't care how much you know, how much you got. They don't even care where you're going. But when they know that you care about them as a human being, it changes their whole life and perspectives in life. Now, I want to be a better businesswoman. I want to do better in the business. I want to understand it better. Because now I feel like I have a mentor that cares about me, my success.
Me?
Yeah, I'm talking about me. Yeah, that's how I feel.
Aww.
And it just makes me, you know, it makes me just want to thrive that much more. And I was looking at some ladies from Atlanta, and they have like this little clique where they do live sales and they do them together. You've been seeing that?
I see stuff like this. Yeah.
I was like,
you're like, Mary, let's do a live sale.
Yeah, I'm like, well, Mary, we got to do that because we got Unity in Louisiana too.
Oh, we do.
I'm like, we got Unity in Louisiana, and then I want my customers to know that they can get a personal shopper and blah blah blah.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm like, we want to do that. So it's a really beautiful feeling to have someone in your life that you can call a sister heart. Do you know what a sister heart is?
No, tell me what a sister heart is.
A sister heart, you have a best friend.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If someone were to tell you not to love that best friend,
mm-hmm.
that would be like taking a piece of your heart out of your chest.
Yeah.
You would cease to exist.
Yeah, I cannot do that.
Well, that's what a sister heart is. A sister heart is a woman that you love so much that if someone tells you not to love her, it would be like taking a piece of your heart out of your chest. You would cease to exist.
So we're sister hearts.
So we're not, you can't say, well, we're just sisters or that's my friend. No, we're sister hearts.
We are 150% sister hearts.
Because we do nothing to hurt the other.
No, and my whole mantra is there is not, like, people, I think, live in a scarcity mindset, which might also be a prison thing.
It is.
Like, very much.
It
and
is.
I do, as the youngest, and, like, with a brother that's, like, very competitive, I grew up very much, like, feeling like there wasn't enough of anything. Like, just scarcity all of the time. Took that into adulthood, and I took that into, adolescence and up. And it wasn't until a few years ago that I realized, like, if I'm going to live in scarcity mindset, then that means everything will always be scarce. Mm-hmm. There will always be scarcity because that's just the way it works, It self-perpetuates itself. There's never going to be enough, And so I just, like, decided one day, I was like, there's enough. I have enough. And my partner and I work on this a lot together. It's like, when do we have enough time together? When do we have enough time off? And I just decided that there's always enough. I decided that I always have enough money. And when I stopped thinking about money as scarce, I just became happier.
That's right.
When I stopped thinking about love from my partner as scarce, I became more secure in my relationship. And I'm coming back to what we were just talking about, I promise. But for me, when I met you and when I work with anyone, I don't believe that there's scarcity in what we do. So say you have a thrift store and I kind of have a thrift store, but not really, right? But we're kind of in the same industry. And I think a lot of people might see, like, I think another person in my position may not say to you, oh, I sell clothes. Because it's risky for me to put myself in that position and be like, oh, I sell clothes. I'm in competition with you. But I don't believe that there's a risk. I believe that there's only opportunity for growth. And I think when I had a scarcity mindset, I wouldn't have been so warm and welcoming when I meet people. But now that I've just, like, gotten rid of that part of my brain, or tried to, obviously I still feel it sometimes, it allows me to just open my heart up to people when I meet them. And I feel like us meeting was a real testament to that work of getting rid of the scarcity. And the decarceration work you do is a real testament to how you meet people as well. So I think when we both met doing the work that we do, like, I'm working on being someone who's, like, open, giving, there's always enough, and you're working on being a whole person who's seen and heard and vulnerable with people. When we met, it was like, oh, we're doing the same thing.
Yes.
We're very much the same person, and in a totally weird roundabout way, because we're obviously so different. But I think that at our cores, we fundamentally believe in and want the same stuff.
The thing with scarcity is, and I understand it as you're explaining it to me, but I guess I have to analyze it a little differently on my end, because I'm rich.
Yeah.
I'm just so rich, and not so much with houses and the land and money. It's like I'm so wealthy inside. I could just think I want something, and it just comes to me. So it's like, you better not think you want too much, because you're overflowing right about now. But that's the thing of it is that when you shared with me, when you open up, you open up a vulnerability. Because of the human nature that's inside of me, that's also there in you, we are very compassionate. We help people grow. This is not the type of nature where it's like, oh, I want to put my foot on your neck. I want you to be oppressed. I don't want you to have as much as me. That is selfish.
Yeah, totally.
You can't get to the level that we're going to get in success with that mindset. It just doesn't happen that way. In order to become a millionaire, you have to help other people climb also. So if the day ever comes when you fall, your fall is buffered.
Yeah.
So if you never help anyone climb and grow,
that's so true. Your fall is going to always be buffered. You can't fail when you live like this.
Absolutely.
There's no such thing as failing.
You cannot.
That is 150% how I feel.
Because when you say, for example, like our business, I feel complements each other so beautifully because, first of all, now I have this mental thing where I want to make sure that Mary makes money. I do. And I have, the resources that I have is enormous. It's like, I can do this stuff in my sleep. Whereas Mary, on the other end, she could help me to open up a world of social, on a social level, that may have been closed for me because I'm not that much of a social butterfly.
Right.
Well, Mary is. Whereas, if Mary wants to do shopping, Mary can call me and say, hey, Mary, I got something special, blah, 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 I need to this. And so Mary's got a door that's open that's not privileged for everybody else.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just not.
Yeah.
Because, I have a loft now since we met. I have a loft. And inside that loft, I'm really doing a lot of things now.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is that we can really combine and make a lot of things happen. And I think having shoppers is just the best thing since mom's apple pie. I really, really do, Mary, because, for example, like this little dress that I'm wearing, this is something I would have never worn.
Yeah.
I would have never worn it.
You look so cute. Also, we did not coordinate our outfits today on purpose, but it did work as magic, as it should, because we're very much the same person.
Yes, in black and white. It was so wonderful. And I just love it because I was going to do big polka dots, and you have the zebra size. I was like, and I'm going to be a little more subtle and vintage because we specialize in vintage.
We are vintage ladies.
Yes.
Well, we have to take a little break for an ad, so we'll be right back, y'all. Stay tuned, and you should go check on YouTube if you're not watching on YouTube to see our very cute outfits. This week's episode of Planet NOLA is brought to you by Vitality Community Fitness, a group training facility located in Metairie, Louisiana. Vitality prioritizes their members with accessible workouts for anybody. Any gender, any size, any ability. I'm a little biased because I do co-own this business, and I gotta say we've got one of the best communities around, really great coaches, really good vibes. So if you're interested in trying out our gym, go to our website, vitalitycommunityfitness.com, click the contact form, and you get 3 free classes in a week. So come check us out. And we're back to Planet NOLA Pod. I'm Mary, I'm with Maryam, and we are talking about New Orleans, a SisterHearts Araby thrift store. We're talking about decarceration. We're talking about, a lot of heady trauma work and caring about ourselves and caring about others. And I want to dig deeper into, the dream world. If we ran the world, if you ran the world tomorrow and somebody was like, I really believe in what you're doing. I believe in the work of decarceration, specifically for our city, because I feel like you said Louisiana has is it the largest prison population?
Louisiana is the incarceration capital of the world.
Wow,
the world.
What a record we have here in Louisiana. What a thing to be proud of,
Yes.
It's so dark. So if in a dream world, specifically in our city, what is the thing that we could build that can be some sort of level work, to help people so that we break that pattern of incarceration? I don't know. What is the thing, if someone gave you $10 million tomorrow, what do you think needs to be built? It could be several things. It could be one idea. What in your dream world, what's the solution?
The solution, and then, Mary, I'm so glad you asked that question because that's something I've already started working on. I may not see it in my lifetime, but I do believe in my heart that it will come to fruition. I have a building, bought and paid for, already up. And if someone were to give me $10 million today, the first thing I would do would be to invest in renovating that building, so that when people come home from prison, they would have, first of all, a place for transitional work, so they could start earning income immediately, where they don't have to go out robbing people or stealing or selling drugs. That's number one. The second thing I would do would be to get another housing complex so that they would have a place to stay.
Right.
So they don't have to be homeless. They would have to have a place to stay. I would probably buy a few vans so that we could have transportation to get people back and forth to their appointments, get them scheduled for medical, dental, eyes, Social Security, food stamps, whatever their needs was on a social level. And then we would start putting them in the program so that they could now start reversing that trauma. They need to understand that just because they committed a crime is not the end of the world. Just because they went to prison, their life is not over.
Right.
That they can actually become assets in their community. And becoming an asset in the community is really a beautiful thing, because that's what SisterHearts has proven. We are owned by a formerly incarcerated, operated by formerly incarcerated, developed, and we are one of the strongest formerly incarcerated organizations in the city. And that has taken place within the past, I've been home now 7 years, 8 years. I've been home now in 8 years. But what we would do is, I would take decarceration inside the prison. That's where it has to start. Before they even get out of prison, they want to start reversing that trauma to give them a higher rate of success once they're released.
Right.
Because, Mary, they're being incarcerated for years and years and years, beaten and tortured and misused and abused, and then they get out with $10.
Yeah, nowhere to stay.
Nowhere to stay.
No job.
And then no one wants to hire us. We can't. Did you know we can't get bank accounts? We can't get credit cards. We can't not live in public housing. We can't get cards on credit. We can't. It's so much we can't get. We can't do. But you expect us to succeed.
Yeah.
We can't.
Yeah, the system is built so that people return.
It is built for us to return.
Yeah.
The only way that you're going to reduce the incarceration imprisonment population is by reducing those recidivism numbers.
Right.
And the only way that you're going to start reducing them is by helping these people to reverse the trauma that you've put on them in the first place.
Exactly. And the structure is to get people back. They build it. It is not built. It's like you said, it is a pipeline from slavery to prison.
Yes.
And it has not changed. That is why, even though our nation has a pretty even split of black and white people, but the prison population, wow, why is it so predominantly black? Gee, I wonder why. Because it was structurally built to be that way. And every system has been supporting it this whole time.
That's right.
And that's why we've got to have more conversations like this. People need to be... They need to understand the prison industrial complex and how it is a capitalistic, for-profit system that exploits primarily black and brown individuals.
Say that now.
Like, I mean, it is, you know, obviously I know the work you do, and I don't think you know how passionate I am about the work you do, which is one of the main reasons that, like, when I met you, I was like, oh, I'm on board. I'm on board with the work you're doing. Because this has been something that I have been passionate about and, like, lost. I feel lost when it comes to it, you know, because it feels so normal for the world to just call the police when someone walks down the street they don't recognize. And it's, people that aren't in prison live imprisoned. They think that there is an authority that decides right and wrong, and that is it. That is it. And it's so subversive and ingrained in us, and people don't realize it's white supremacy. It is white supremacy.
That's it.
Built into us. And it is our job. It is every white person's job to see it, understand it, to name it, to understand the history. Everyone should understand the history of slavery in this country and understand the history of the prison system in this country. Because I believe that if we teach this to people from a very young age, they will understand and have the tools to not repeat it.
That's
you
right.
know? And that's why states like Texas don't want critical race theory in their schools, because they love the prison industrial complex there, you know? Like, these conservative states thrive with large prison populations. They thrive making sure that they have control of their black and brown populations in their states. And the way they do that is prison.
Absolutely.
And they know it. So the work you're doing is the work of our city and our state. Obviously, like you said, Louisiana, number one. But it is the work of our nation that is built on the backs of black and brown people. Quite literally on the backs.
That's right.
And I can only do so much, but it's like I'm going to do as much as I can. But it's like if everyone did as much as they could, if everyone educated themselves, understood what was going on in our nation, understood that they can play a role, even if it's shopping at SisterHearts once a month.
That's right.
They can do something.
They can make $1 donation.
Exactly.
You know, if you have 1 million people make $1 donation a month, do you know we don't really get grants and federal funds anyway.
Right.
Jack Dorsey gave us a wonderful donation last year, but minus that, we're just surviving. But Mary, you're saying so much that needs to be said.
Yeah.
We need to start normalizing the conversation around incarceration. We need to normalize it, because how many people have just walked up to a person and in a conversation say, "Oh, by the way, have you ever been to prison?"
Never.
You don't do that.
No, yeah. You can't do that.
Yeah.
That's not a thing. And it's also, people say that they want to unlearn their own white supremacy, but they don't want to look at the uncomfortableness of what that is.
Okay.
Which is prison. It's literally keeping black and brown people in prison in your brain. It's the racism in your brain.
Okay.
It's all the white supremacy in your brain that makes you be like, well, prison's normal. This is what happens when you're bad. You're bad, you go to prison. That is white supremacy in your brain. Like, we need to unlearn these systems, because they're keeping us down. They're keeping you down. They're keeping me down. They're keeping our whole city down. And it's a bunch of white men in power that want it that way.
Well, now, Mary,
it always has been, and white women. But
Mary, you might be onto something, because, like, I'm trying to reverse the trauma of incarceration. You may need to be trying to reverse that, because I never thought about it until you just said
that's
it.
not your job to think of that. It's the white people's job to think about their own racism and their own white supremacy. And I mean, I think that not even a small fraction of people are doing that work. It's a two-way street. And so for me, being a support to you, talking to you, having you on this podcast is a way to give more platform to that, because obviously that's not my side of it. My side of it is work on my own shit and be as vocal as I can and do as much work as I personally can. But it's like only you can speak to the decarceration process, you know?
I got that part, but this white supremacy bullshit, I'm like, I didn't even realize that's not even something I even really ever thought about.
God.
I'm like,
well, you do think about it, you just don't realize it, because you just said it. You said it was slavery, and then they needed more slaves, and the only way they could have slaves is by making everything illegal that black people did, and they made them slaves again. Right. So that's white supremacy. You named it. You got the words for it. You understand it. I'm just yelling about it.
Okay, well, now it makes sense though.
Yeah. You've got all the pieces for sure.
Wow.
But this has been such a good conversation. We've really covered a lot of ground. How do you feel?
I feel absolutely wonderful. Let's talk about how can a regular average Joe Blow, Sally Jane, what can they do to help our passion and our cause and our mission? Just a regular person. Of course, they can shop SisterHearts.org at any time. They can shop SisterHearts thrift store. They can always call on Mary's Rack. Of course, Mary's Rack is the best stylist in the state. Of course, I'm telling you. Because even though, you see some of this, I have to be at my best styling attire here because I represent a professional stylist. So we can do those things. But other than that, what are some of the other things that you think people can do besides to normalize the conversation about incarceration?
Well, I think everything I just said on my end, it's white people really need to do the work of working on their internalized stuff. They need to look in the mirror and ask themselves, what do they believe to be true and why? And ask themselves what they're comfortable with. Are you comfortable with the way the prison system is in our nation? And if you're not, then you need to be a vocal advocate against it. And you need to take steps, and you need to go vote when there are things on the ballot that that represent formerly incarcerated people. You need to like have conversations with people that have different experiences than you, and you need to listen. I feel like most people, not anybody, everyone is a bad listener for the most part. People need to learn how to listen, because when you can really open your ears and hearts to conversations like we just had, you learn and you grow and you get better and smarter, and you understand the nuance of people and the complexities of people, and then you understand why putting somebody in a box for 7 years with no contact is the act of dehumanization, and they are a human. When you talk to someone, you are a complex individual who deserves to be seen and heard, and shutting you away solves nothing. It solves for nothing. It doesn't make you better, doesn't make me better, doesn't make the society better. It does nothing except pad the pockets of the people that get paid to put you in that room. That's all it does.
It's not a room, it's a cage.
The cage, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just think we all need to be doing the work that you're doing and that I'm trying to do. I think we all need to be taking steps towards decarceration for formerly incarcerated individuals, and working on the white supremacy that lives in my mind and all of the white people's minds in our nation, and especially our state. Our state.
Man, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
You know, people go to prison, they give them life imprisonment, right?
Yes.
They give them 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Well, Mary, but prison is supposed to be a place for rehabilitation, right?
It's never been that.
Okay, but let's just say, for the piece of saying it is for rehabilitation. But how can you know if I've been rehabilitated if I'm never ever going to get an opportunity to show the world that I've been rehabilitated? How can you know? When will you know? You give me 50 years, but what if I'm rehabilitated in 20?
It is not about justice, and we know that. We know that it has nothing to do with justice. Nothing, because justice would be rehabilitation. It would be the person learning, growing, changing, and coming out new. That would be the justice of the situation.
That would be decarceration.
That would be decarceration.
They don't want decarceration, Mary. You got to know that, because decarceration is going to reduce the prison population, and so we're not. You know, I'm on this pioneering path, but I know that there's the obstacles. Once it hits, we're going to need people behind it, because if you Google what is decarceration, they say decarceration is removing people from mental institutions and prison and like releasing them.
Just put them in the world.
Yeah, put them in the world. No, it's not. When we're talking about decarceration, we're talking about reversing the trauma of incarceration.
Hell yeah. And I think we have to end this.
Yes.
But I think that was the perfect thesis of everything we just said.
Yes.
Everything we've talked about today. Before we go, I always ask my guests the same last question, and I'm sorry this is going to catch you off guard, but if I could interview one person for this, who would you recommend? Is there anybody that you think should talk on here? I like to interview people who are living in the greater New Orleans area, doing cool things, or inspiring things, or fun things, or just interesting people living in the greater New Orleans area. Is there anybody that comes to your mind first when I say that to you?
The one person that has impacted my life the most in the past year, and that I have truly been able to see decarceration through their eyes, would be Anthony.
Oh, really? Okay, your partner.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's who we got to get on here at some point. Anthony, are you ready? He's here right now, so we'll quiz him afterwards. We won't put him on the spot now.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for being here. You're the best. Thank you guys so much for listening to Planet NOLA Pod. I'm Mary. This has been me and Maryam talking about Sister Hearts Thrift Store. Check them out. Follow us on socials. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Bye.